Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, brother.
I'm just the opening act. Eric will be up in a few short minutes. Coming up for an idea for a talk can be frustrating for me. Don't want to just say something that's already been said, or you want to come up with something that's worthwhile, hopefully. So what I came up with was this interaction my wife had with a little girl and her mom or grandma, not sure. That kept popping up in my mind, and I finally decided, with her permission, I was going to see where it took me. We were on spring break in Branson, Missouri, and eating lunch. My wife complimented a young girl, maybe 6 or so, on having such long, beautiful hair. You know how my wife is. So my wife told her how she had just cut her hair and already missed having it long like this little girl's. And as she was walking away, my wife overheard the little girl, ask her mom or grandma, "Why is that lady's hair now short and not long like mine?" The grandma responded, "It's because she doesn't believe in God." Whoa. So that took a weird turn, right? Police weren't called, nothing got out of hand. We think they were apostolic based on, I think those the long denim dresses and the long hair. I think that's apostolic. I don't know, and it's probably their belief about women with long hair based on a lot of times 1 Corinthians 11. But that's a lesson for another day. I'm not going to touch that topic there, but I think there's still several lessons or applications we can make about this interaction that we had. Never go to Branson when Arkansas is on spring break, I guess. Just kidding. I knew we had an Arkansas family here, so. Parents, do your children ask you questions about God, about faith or religion? If not, we need to do better. In moderation, of course. In life, there are seasons, and childhood is not the season probably to dwell too much on religion, etc. For children, but it should still come up. It's not the main thing that children, but it should definitely still come up. Kids ask questions, lots and lots of questions, especially in the car, especially at bedtime. I still feel most questions by kids should be about sharks and spiders and what's the most, those kind of questions. But what the deadliest snake is, that's a common one. But big questions about God and faith are a good thing too. They're important. They ask questions about what they're exposed to. And if we aren't exposing them to God, to our faith, then we're failing them greatly. Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning in verse 6. "And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up." And that's Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 through 7. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." I completely understand that telling someone how to raise your child is a terrible idea. As parent of twins, we got lots of coaching, some of it good, some of it bad. But you will never regret sprinkling God into conversations with your child. Every day they are forming who they'll grow up to be. Being at least a little spiritually minded can't start soon enough. I know. That's weird. I know I haven't always done it enough. Allergies. Is there anything about your life that your children question? Is there anything, for non-parents, is there anything about you, the way that you live your life that people question? This child understood that the way she was instructed to keep her hair was unique compared to many. What about you? Do your kids ask why they can't watch or do things that a lot of their friends do? Go places, wear things, can't make other plans on Sunday, etc. For non-parents, do your coworkers notice that you don't say certain words, don't participate in certain conversations? It was a good thing that this girl was aware of some of these things, and our kids should be aware that there's differences too. 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. You're a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Therefore, next passage. I'm realizing that it's only 10 minutes, and 10 minutes goes really fast when you're up here, really slow when you're down there sometimes. So Romans chapter, and I'm a little too much extemporaneous. So Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Again, each parent has their own decisions to make, but nothing opened up our eyes quicker to the sins of this world more than having kids. They are exposed to so much so quickly. YouTube. Oh, I hate YouTube. TV, tablets, smartphones, other kids at school. I'm only kind of old, but when I was little, adults didn't cuss in front of their kids. At least where I grew up, I didn't. But now parents say and do anything and everything in front of their kids. And the kids absorb it all and repeat it all at a young age. I know my wife and I are constantly trying to do better. It's that, you've got the TV show on. Oh, we don't want to have them hear us watching something like that. Well, why are we watching it, right? So you got to make your own decision. But hopefully we all have things about us that makes us look a little peculiar to modern society. Hopefully, your kids are doing some things that the rest of society, or don't do things that the rest of society does. It is wonderful if kids see that. Obviously, to a degree, you don't, everyone parent your own way. I'll leave it at that. You don't want your kids, everyone parent their own way, but don't hesitate to have things be a little different than the way the rest of the world does. Them knowing they're being raised by godly parents is a wonderful thing. Once again, I'm not saying anything about long hair on women. But I'm just saying it isn't a bad thing that she was aware that her parents had certain standards, even if maybe we don't agree what those standards are entirely. Okay, so I'm going to go a little quicker now. How do we talk about contrary beliefs? That's our third thing to think about here. I truly believe that lady was being a little passive-aggressive and knew full well that my wife could hear her answer. I love that she was bold and confident in her beliefs. But is that effective? Is that loving to answer that way? Every situation is unique, and we all have to make our own decisions on how to defend and explain our beliefs. There's no one-size-fits-all technique, but I think there's some principles that we should always keep in mind when we're answering children, especially, about our faith. Am I answering out of love? Am I answering humbly? Am I answering to glorify God? We live in an age where people will say whatever they want, however they want. Keyboard warriors. Perhaps digital communication has led to a lot of this, but it's terrible. Out of love, humbly, glorifying God. Romans 10:14. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? How will they believe in him who they have not heard? And how will they hear without a preacher? How will they preach unless they are sent? Just as is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things. People, we can't be that harsh to people. They have never heard except for us. Proverbs 15 and verse 1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise make knowledge acceptable, but the mouth full of fools spouts folly. Even in Acts chapter 17 and verse 22, when Paul was teaching, he talked about, in Acts chapter 17, verse 22, men of Athens, I observe that you are religious. They were completely wrong in their religion. Here, Paul is trying to use tact to compliment and correct at the same time. not talking down to or being arrogant about these people's faults. This is a topic that I can cover and this isn't a topic I can completely cover, but a lesson we can make, or an application we can make is, as perhaps when we talk about our beliefs or explain someone's unbelief, especially to a child, we need to do so lovingly, patiently, and compassionately. Amen. We all have a lot to learn. I'm sure we're all doing something that someone else here would love to correct us about. I know I've had a lot in my life that could use improvement, absolutely. I also know I can do a lot better trying to teach others and answer questions. Final point I'm going to make from this interaction: can you answer questions about your faith? Do you have an explanation for what you do or don't do? Can you tell someone why you believe or have faith that you do? Or do you just do stuff because that's what your parents did? You just follow what others think and you don't want to rock the boat? This lady had a quick answer for the child. Do you have a quick answer for questions that you're asked? In Acts chapter 17, Paul talked about how the Bereans, he considered them to be more noble-minded because they searched the scriptures to decide if things were so. Amen. In 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 15, sanctify God, Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. And all these verses I've used today are very basic, but just to bring a reminder of things. It's a noble thing to understand and be able to defend your faith, and to be able to do it with gentleness and reverence is even better. If we start our kids off with that example, we do them a huge favor. It might have been my fault for growing up and interpreting it this way, but I grew up with the mindset, and I think Ron and Wade have both kind of mentioned it too, that maybe they had some of this growing up too, that we grew up with the mindset of the Bible so clear and obvious, and there's no excuse for people to not believe everything exactly the way I do. It's simple to look at these Bible verses that we can quote, sometimes completely out of context, to prove our point. We all had the little cheat sheets and we all had the lesson books that made everything just seem so simple. Well, what I found as I grew up was that was a huge disservice. There's so much isn't black and white, and if you don't have the right attitude of gentleness and humbleness and love, and you don't do the proper study, interactions with others are going to go really poorly. So, in conclusion, let's not be afraid to talk about God with our kids, with everyone. Let's not be afraid to establish some spiritual guidelines in our lives and in our children's lives to keep them as pure as possible. Let's answer spiritual questions the right way with the right attitude, and let's be able to answer spiritual questions, not rely on what others have learned, but what we have learned for ourselves by studying and praying. Thank you. Amen.